ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So we welcome all the participants for our weekly Bhagavad Gita class. We are on chapter 13, shloka number 8 to 12, 20 items of knowledge. We have completed 10. We'll just quickly go through the synopsis of last class. We discussed how there are two kinds of cleanliness, external and internal. And we discussed last time how unless the internal cleanliness is mentioned or is maintained, then there is no hope for external cleanliness. The real solution is internal cleanliness, and also it is related to clean habits. Unless there is cleanliness inside, there cannot be clean habits. Second point we discussed last time was steadfastness. And one of the examples was how the wind is unaffected by good fragrance or foul stench. And this is the example that Lord Krishna gives to Uddhav in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So just like wind is unaffected in all kinds of different situations, the expectation is that we should also not become affected by different kinds of ups and downs that come in our life. And then we discussed how if we are surrounded by steadiness, then where is the question of a recommendation of steadiness? The recommendation of steadiness becomes important only when we are surrounded by an ocean of unsteadiness. And that's why if any one of us feel, oh, I could have been steady, but do you know what is happening in my life? Do you know what are ups and downs going in my life? That's the point. A good driver is not a driver who drives the car smoothly on the Bombay Pune Expressway. The Bombay Pune Expressway is a four-lane highway on each side, and there is ample space for the cars to run, and there's a lot of nice. The road is quite smooth. There are a lot of facilities. So on such a very smooth road, if a driver is driving, that's not the skill of the driver. That's the whole facility of the road on which he's driving. Real skills will be displayed when he is driving on SV Road near Andheri at 7 o'clock in the evening, when it is bumper to bumper traffic, and for a distance of 10 kilometers, it takes something like 2 hours or something. Suddenly, somebody comes in between. Suddenly, the traffic signal changes, and you have to, in a matter of seconds, you have to go ahead. At the same time, you cannot hit anybody. At the same time, the person for whom the driver is driving the car, he should not feel a sudden jerk in the car. So everything has to be maintained. That's the whole point. So that's why Krishna is recommending steadfastness, knowing fully well, and the people who are educating us, they also fully understand that this world is not steady. This world is highly unsteady. The situations in our life are highly unsteady. But that is why steadiness is important. That is why steadiness gets its recommendation. That yes, when we are surrounded by an ocean of unsteadiness, we would do well if we are trying to achieve steadiness. And then we discussed another point, self control, Atma Vinigraha. Seeing the bigger picture helps us maintain self control. Till the point we keep focusing on small things in our life, till that point, self control will be difficult. But when we see, no, there are so many things in my life, and when you see the whole arrangement of the Lord, then it helps us to maintain self-control. The fourth point we discussed last time was renunciation of objects of sense gratification. And we discussed how a deadly serpent with fangs is very dangerous, but a deadly serpent without fangs is not dangerous. It just looks like a serpent, but without any fangs, it's not dangerous because the senses have been engaged in service of Lord Krishna. When the senses are not engaged in service of Lord Krishna, are not engaged positively, then each and every sense can cause so much trouble to us. Just like the eyes, they cause trouble to the moth, and the moth is drawn into a flame and then gets burnt. The sense of touch causes so much trouble to an elephant because the elephant has a weak sense of touch. And as soon as somebody rubs on the elephant's skin, then it's very sensitive, and then that causes him to get trapped. The sense of uh, hearing is so troublesome to the deer because sometimes they play a sweet flute and they play a sweet song which is very attractive to the deer, and the deer gets trapped in this way. The sense of the tongue is so troublesome to the fish. As soon as there is a worm that is hanging around a bait, then the fish will get trapped there and immediately it can be caught. So that is how so many living entities are facing trouble because of their uncontrolled senses. And think about it, a human being today is going in the direction of having all these senses uncontrolled. His tongue is so uncontrolled. He wants to eat newer and newer animals. He wants to eat newer and newer reptiles. He wants to eat newer and newer objects. And that causes so many problems. But those same senses, when they're engaged in service of Lord Krishna, then they are our friends. Then they don't trouble us. In fact, they help us. They bring us closer to the Supreme Lord. So point, today's item of knowledge, as per Lord Krishna, is anahankaraha, or absence of false ego. So I would like to take reference of this book. This is a very famous author called H.G. Wells. And in 1954, he has written this book called The Country of the Blind. Has any one of you heard about this story, The Country of the Blind? If yes, then you can unmute and tell me. Okay, no problem. So it's a fictional story, and it mentions that there was once a huge mountain, and this is narrated that this is all happening in a country called Ecuador. So in this Ecuador country, there is a tall mountain, and on the other side of the mountain, there is a valley, and there is this person called Nunes, and this Nunes, he is exploring the countryside, he is exploring the forest, and he slips. And he had always heard that there is some civilization in that part of the forest, but he would feel, how can there be a civilization in a forest? And as he was trying to understand, he slips and he falls. And when he falls down, as he talks, he falls down and discovers that there is a small village at the bottom of the valley. And when he reaches there, he meets people. There are homes, and there is agriculture going on. A lot of things are going on there. But this Nunes soon finds out that none of those people in that village are having sight. They cannot see. But not a problem. When he gets accustomed to that area, slowly he adapts to them. And in order to earn some living, he works under a person called Jacob. And this Jacob has a beautiful daughter. So slowly, as he's working with Jacob, he falls in love with Jacob's daughter. And then a point comes when he decides to get married, because that cliff, that valley is so straight, is so sharp, that Nunes understands there is no way of going back. I cannot go back. So then, if life is here, he just accepts reality. But during the time when he's staying there, he understands that because they don't understand what is eyesight, there are a lot of things that are missing from their life. There are a lot of beautiful things that are missing from their life. And so one day, when that marriage is already fixed, he tries explaining to his would-be wife what is this concept of sight. And he says, this flower here, she knows the flower by the sense of touch. But he starts explaining how this flower also has something called as color. And there is red color, there is a blue color, there is green color. And the wife does not understand. But as he goes on speaking more and more about the colors, something happens to her. She feels maybe her husband is a crazy person. Maybe her husband is something wrong with him. So she reports to her father that my would-be husband, he keeps speaking about something called sight, and he keeps speaking something about colors and all that. And slowly this news spreads in the whole town. And then the elderly people of that village, who have never seen anything, they're all blind. They call a meeting, and the religious person there, he is consulted. So he says that it seems there is something wrong with this man. And if he has to stay in our village, then he has to accept the customs of this village. And for that, we will recommend that, he keeps talking about eyes, and he keeps talking about seeing and all that. So we feel that there is something wrong with his eyes. And the decision is made that Nunes' eyes should be plugged off, or at least, they need to be operated upon, so that then he will become a sane person. And in this way, this Nunes, when he comes to know of this, he is faced with a challenge. Should he follow his heart? Should he follow his love and agree to this marriage proposal? But the price of that marriage proposal is that his eyes will be plugged off. Or should he maintain the fact, the truth? The truth is, there is something called as sense of sight, there is something called as colors, and the reality is that the whole world outside that village knows the sense of sight, the whole world outside knows what is colors. It is only those people who are lost in that valley, they don't know what is colors. And so the story shows that this person, actually, he sticks to the truth, and he gives up his attachment to his lover, and this person tries to escape from the valley. That's where the original book ends. So why did we tell this story? This story is a very amazing description of how, when there is a conception enforced and implemented for a long, long time, even though that conception may be a false conception, but still majority of the people, they don't dare to go beyond the ordinary conception. Finally, man is a social animal, and because he's social, he wants to do something that will find social acceptance. It may be wrong, it may be right, but the biggest question that comes to people's mind is, log kya kahenge? And that's why many times what we do in life, what we choose to do in life, how we plan our life is not based on what is right. It is primarily based on what is socially acceptable. There's a very interesting experiment that was done. And this experiment was there were 5 monkeys who were kept in a cage. And there was a bunch of bananas that was kept on the top of the cage. And every time one monkey, any monkey, would go and try to get those bananas, other than the feeding time, experiment is at other. But this was some extra thing. Whenever the monkeys would go and try to get those bananas, there was a pipe nearby which would spray cold water on the monkey, whoever monkey would go to take the bananas. So the first monkey tried, it got sprayed with cold water, and animals, any animal, dogs, cats, they never like water. They never like cold water, especially. So anytime this monkey would go, he would get sprayed with cold water. And finally, at one point of time, this one monkey gave up, and the other monkeys started trying. Finally, all the 5 monkeys understood that he or me, whatever it is, but whenever we go for that bananas, we get sprayed with cold water. So then what happened? Anytime any monkey would go, the other 4 monkeys would remember that why to get unnecessarily sprayed with cold water. So they would pounce upon this monkey, they would catch this monkey, and they would not allow him to go. Now, what they did is, after some time, they took out one monkey from that original 5 monkeys and they replaced him with a new monkey. And this new monkey did not know anything about cold water. This new monkey did not know anything about that spraying business. So, innocent monkey, he tried to go for those bananas, and the other 4 monkeys, because they had experience, they pounced upon him. And slowly, this monkey understood, as soon as I go near the bananas, these monkeys pounce upon me. And he didn't know the reason because he never was sprayed with cold water. So slowly, he understood, never go for that banana, although he had no experience of what happens when you go for these bananas. Then another monkey of the original monkeys was taken out, and the second monkey was put. So now you have one monkey who has never experienced the cold water, you have one monkey who's innocent, and there are 3 monkeys who have experienced the cold water. This time, when that new monkey, the innocent monkey, tried to go for the bananas, very surprisingly, it was found that not only the 3 monkeys jumped upon him, but the monkey who had never experienced cold water, but he had experienced the pouncing of the monkeys, he also pounced upon this fifth monkey. In this way, they took out one more monkey from the original batch. And in this way, slowly, they reached a situation. In the cage, now there are 5 monkeys, and all the 5 monkeys are new monkeys, and none of the monkeys has ever experienced the cold water that is sprayed when you go for the bananas. But in these 5 monkeys also, any monkey, whenever he innocently went near the bunch of bananas, the other 4 monkeys pounced upon him and basically did not allow him to go for the bananas. So what does this mean? Anybody would like to unmute and tell me what does this mean from this experiment of these monkeys? None of them had experienced the cold water, but everyone started pouncing whenever any monkey went near the bunch of bananas.
We
Hare
blindly
Krishna,
follow
Prabhu.
social rules.
Yes, so Chaya Mataji is saying that we are prone to following blindly. Okay, somebody else?
So yeah, basically Hare Krishna Prabhuji, the same thing that whatever we have been following for ages and ages, we just keep following without knowing what the reason is. And then just keep doing it
Yes,
because somebody else before us
yes,
has done it over and over.
yes. And maybe, he made sure, he or she made very sure that those impressions on us are very strong. So just because of those force, that kind of force that is put on us, we accept it. Similarly, that is also what happened to Nunes, but he did not accept it. There's also another story that is mentioned in our Vedic literature. We'll quote a story from the Vedic literature. On the screen, the top picture shows a very beautiful eagle, and this eagle has given birth to some eaglets. And you will also see in the below picture that this nest of those eagles is high up in a mountain. Actually, you can see the whole setting. It's a mountain, and some place in the mountain there is some place, and that is where this eagle family is staying. So actually, eagles, they are royal birds. They are king of birds, and that's why it always soars very high in the sky. It has a lot of strength. And similarly, so in our Vedic literature, it is described that once upon a time there was this eagle family, and his father eagle was the king of all the birds, and both of them, they gave birth to some eaglets. But before giving birth to those eaglets, when they were those eggs, actually what happened, one day there was a strong storm that blew, just like in Bombay. Last 3 4 days we were experiencing a storm. Suddenly the trees are swaying and the branches are falling and all that. So unfortunately, that egg that was there in the nest, it also was swept away by the wind, and it fell down, it rolled down. And when it rolled down, because this is a jungle, this is a mountain, there are many trees, there are thick branches and all that. So the egg, it fell down, and because it is an eagle's egg, it was also having some strength. But in addition to that, it got the fall of that egg was interrupted by many branches and many leaves and like that. So somehow it survived the fall, and when it came down, it reached into some kind of a village. But this village is not, our normal village. This is some kind of a tribal village. And in this tribal village, they had hens at their home. So there's a chicken and there are chicklets. So one day this egg, when it fell down near the eggs of a chicken. So four chicklets, four eggs of the chicken and one egg of the eagle. And slowly the hen would always come and the hen would sit on those eggs and give warmth to the eggs. And slowly all those eggs started hatching. Now the chicken, the hen, is not very intelligent. So the hen could see, oh, I gave only four eggs, but how did this fifth egg come from? But still she said, no problem. I can give my warmth to the fifth egg also. So when the four eggs of the chicken, they hatched, there were four chicklets there, four or five chicklets there in the picture. And in addition to that, because this eaglet
Yeah,
egg had also fallen
take
there,
me.
and the chicken had given nourishment to that egg
Have to
also.
mute. No, you have unmuted your call. Kiran, have to mute. Samanyari speaking. Leave me,
You
take
left
me
a
audio
polling.
only.
So chicken now had, multiple children, and majority of them were the chicklets, and there was only one eaglet. Now, if you look at the picture, you can understand this is a real picture of a baby eaglet. The chicklets look very different. The chicklets are yellow in color, and the eaglet is blackish in color with a white tuft on its head. That's how the eagle looks. So, although this eaglet was looking different, but the mother chicken felt, no, no, finally it's a small child, and I should take care of this child. And so, whenever the chicken would walk, these five chicklets would walk behind, followed by this eaglet, because the eaglet always felt, I look strange, I'm not normal. And that is also the impression that the four or five other chicklets would give to the eaglet. Hey, you're dark, you're dark, and you are not normal. Look at us, we are normal. Look at everyone. Oh, everyone is yellow colored, and only you are blackish. So there was an inferiority complex that was imposed on the eaglet by these chicklets. Life went on. Uh, First, the chicken would feed the children. So she would go around, she would bring some worms, some insects, and would feed the children. And that's what the eaglet also learned. Slowly, they all learned to eat food and they learned from their mother. So, mother would take them around and then, they would peck at the ground for some insects or some worms like that. And the eaglet had a big beak because it's an eagle and it would have difficulty to eat all those small insects and those small worms on the ground. And those chicklets would laugh on the eaglet and they would say, see, you are a good for nothing. Actually, you can't even eat worms, you can't have your own food, and you also look very blackish, you are not fair complexion and all that. So the eaglet would always feel bad and he was always made to feel bad. One day, a wise owl who was sitting on the tree, he saw, oh, I had heard that the king and the queen had laid some eggs, and one of the eggs had rolled down, and this egg is lost. And the mother and the father eagle are in deep pain. And it seems that this egg has rolled down here because I can see very clearly this is an eaglet, this is not a chicklet. But then, as he observed, he found that this eaglet was trying to be a part of this chicken family, the hen family. So, what to do now? So, the owl kept waiting for some time when the eaglet was all alone. And one day, the owl, when it is sitting on the branch of a tree, whistled to this eaglet. And the eaglet looked up and he said, you know what? You don't belong here. You don't belong here. You don't have to accept all these worms and all the comments that the chicklets pass on you. You don't belong here. And the eaglet was so scared because the owl was looking very different. The owl was not even looking like the mother. And the mother had already told the eaglet, please don't believe anybody who tells you anything. Just believe your brothers and you believe me. So the eaglet ran away from there. And this owl was thinking, oh, the mother and the father eagle are in deep pain, and this the eaglet is here, and the eaglet is being spoken, so many admonishments. So what to do? Again, one day, the owl came and was sitting on a branch of a tree and saying, eaglet, you don't belong here. You don't need to be criticized every day by the chicklets. And the eaglet again ran away from that. The eaglet just did not want to hear anything from this strange looking owl. Very soon, this owl, he was just not able to understand what to do, how to reunite the eaglet with the mother and the father eagle. So one day he decided to do something that was unthinkable. What he did was he swooped down. He did not wait for the eaglet. He caught hold of the eaglet in its claws and flew high in the air. The owl also can fly in the air. The chicken cannot fly high in the air. So the owl took him up. And as I mentioned, this was a tribal village. This was at the base of a mountain. And there were a lot of trees and there was a lot of shade there. That's why the egg had survived. But this owl, he took that eaglet beyond the trees, beyond the branches, and took the eaglet high up, tall, and exposed it to the sun. And when he was exposed to the sun, there was some heat that came to this eaglet. This eaglet was feeling very cold in that tribal village. And then the eaglet did something which was unthinkable. The owl let go of the eaglet. And this eaglet is falling straight to the ground. And now we don't know what's going to happen. But as it is mentioned, all of us have this desire to survive. All of us have this desire to live. All of us have this desire to go through struggles. So this eaglet is falling down and it is thinking, now I'm going to be dead, because he never saw the mother chicken flying anywhere above 6 or 7 feet. Where too much, 6 or 7 feet is too much for the chicken. So always saw the chicken flying 2 or 3 feet. And the small chicklets would say, oh, my mother is so amazing. My mother is flying 6 or 7 feet in air. And here this eaglet was falling down from 250 feet. But because he had that desire in his heart to live, to survive, somehow he spread his wings on the side. And as soon as he spread his wings on the side, because he was an eaglet body. He had a lot of strength in his wings. Immediately he floated in the air. And then, to his amazement, he felt this inner desire to flap his wings. And when he flapped his wings slowly, he started flying in the air. And then he realized, I am 200 feet in the air, and I'm just a small child, and I'm already flying, and I'm already flapping my wings, and I'm already surviving. And my mother and my brothers and my sisters, they could never do this. And then he understood that not only I am different, I am not weaker, actually I am stronger. Actually, I have a lot of strength in my wings, which none of my brothers and my sisters have. And then he understood that the owl was always telling him, hey, you don't belong here. Hey, you don't have to accept all this criticism. Hey, you don't have to accept all this nonsense that is being thrown at you. So now he approached the owl and he asked him, what was that story you were telling me that I don't belong here? What was it about? And the owl told him, see, actually, look at you and look at others. You are not this family. You are not supposed to survive on small worms and small insects that are found in the ground. Actually, you are to be ruling over the bird family. All the birds, you are supposed to rule over them. And you are such a royal bird. You can go to the river and in a matter of a second, you can fish something from the river fresh. And you don't have to survive on these germs and insects and all that. And slowly, the owl told him the reality. And then he said, the eaglet said, so who are my real parents? And the owl said, yes, this is the question that I wanted you to ask. And now, because you're asking this question, I'm going to tell you who are your parents. And the owl flew with the eaglet. The eaglet is flying on his own. And then the owl took him to the mother and the father eagle who were staying on top of the mountain. And when the eaglet saw the mother and the father, then he realized that his features were like the eagle's. Now there was no question of somebody criticizing him for his dark complexion. And the mother and father were so happy. The mother and father immediately embraced the eaglet, and the eaglet was reinstituted in its constitutional position. So this story is told in the Vedic literature to help us understand how you and me actually are the children of God. And we are actually situated in a very high position. We are spiritual beings. We have a direct connection with the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is our mother and father. But somehow, because of some situation, the, the fall of the living entity has happened. From the Vaikuntha planets, where we were staying with God, we fell down into the material world. And in the material world, we got into so many complications and so many attachments. And just for a small mistake, we are criticized, we are harassed, we are laughed upon so many times. And when we are undergoing all this, many times because there is no alternative, because everyone else is doing that. Everyone else is in this mad race for money, for power, and there seems to be no alternative. So we think everyone is unhappy. Actually, everyone is unhappy, but nobody wants to speak the truth. And that's why they say, no, no, actually, I'm unhappy today, but tomorrow I'm going to be happy. And in this way, we lead a very dull, self, self-denigrating life. It hurts a lot, but we don't have an alternative. And in this kind of situation, the devotees of the Lord, they sometimes come to us and they tell us, hey, you don't belong here. You don't have to accept all this criticism and nonsense. Actually, you belong to the Supreme Lord. You are a very powerful person. But because there is no mainstream acceptance of spirituality, the mainstream society does not accept God, the mainstream society does not accept spirituality. Mainstream society wants us to work hard and become slaves. So sometimes we don't believe devotees, sometimes we don't accept the words of the devotees. Also, they look very different. They look happy, they look satisfied. And then we feel, how can somebody be so satisfied and how can somebody be so happy? Then we feel maybe actually it's a pretense that they are happy. And in this way, we avoid devotees. But one day, the devotees will forcibly expose us to some kirtan. The devotees will forcibly expose us to some katha. the devotees will forcibly give us some Mahaprasad. And as soon as we have the first contact with Krishna through Prasad or through Kirtan or through some very nice lecture, then we are exposed to the sun. And when we are exposed to the sun, then we understand, yeah, actually, I don't belong here. You feel an immediate connection, just like maybe there is some family and the child is separated from the family, and now the memory is not there. But as soon as he sees some objects that are connected to the mother and the father, then slowly the memory returns. So when we listen to Krishna Katha, when we listen to Krishna's instructions, actually somewhere it strikes a chord within our memory, because we were there in the spiritual world with Krishna and we have heard all this. Actually, this knowledge is there inside. But when we hear from devotees, then somewhere that connection happens. And hey, this is very nice. This is very empowering. I really feel very strong. I really feel very encouraged when I hear to these lectures on the Gita and the Bhagavatam. And in this way, the devotees expose us to the real reality. So that is how this very beautiful story of the chicklets and the eaglets is told to us to help us understand how we don't belong to the material world. Actually, we belong to the spiritual world. And just like the eaglet was taken to the high mountains to meet the eagle, the mother and the father eagle, actually the devotees, they never have any other intention other than reconnecting us to the original mother and father, Shri Shri Radha Krishna. So only when we connect to Shri Shri Radha Krishna, that is the time when we will get eternal happiness, eternal satisfaction, and everything will fall in its place. But till that time, there is a struggle in this world, and we have devotees to help us. So, as time goes by in this world, the original person becomes more and more lost because there are newer and newer identities that are enforced on this person. So sometimes he is told that you need to have an image, you need to make an image of yourself. Sometimes his beliefs, his experiences in this world, they make him what he thinks he is. Sometimes he is told, see, don't think about what is happening in the world. It's all about your attitude. You keep a positive attitude. And then sometimes people tell me, Prabhuji, everything that could go wrong is going wrong. And how can I have a positive attitude when everything is going wrong? Without a connection to God, without a connection to the source of all positivity, how can an atheistic person just feel positive because he's told to be positive? It's just impossible. Sometimes people are told, no, forget about this forget about this beliefs and attitude and all that. It's all about your abilities. So you just become a very intelligent person, or you become a very strong person, or you show off your strengths and all that. In this way, skills or stories, what is our role, what class we belong to, the upper class, the middle class, the lower class, we are just, told that all these things will give us happiness. In this way, there is a narrative that is built. The novels that we read build this narrative. The movies that we watch, they add to this narrative, and everyone around us builds this narrative. No one has experienced happiness in money, but they will tell us, no, no, when you become rich, then you will be happy. No one is experiencing happiness in all the power politics that takes place in a company, but they will say, no, 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 you need to rise to the top. But are you happy rising to the top? They say, no, we are not happy, but I know tomorrow I'm going to be happy, and tomorrow never comes. So in this way, we are also like that eaglet, and we are fallen into this tribal village, and we have accepted that we also need to feed on those worms and those insects. I'll tell you one story. This is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the story of Prithu Maharaj. So if you look at the picture, then there is one body that is lying on the ground. That is a dead person. That is King Vena. And from the body of the King Vena, this Prithu Maharaj was raised. So on the left side, you see a four-headed person. Actually, he's Lord Brahma. And all the sages and all the demigods, they were so happy that Prithu Maharaj appeared. Actually, Prithu Maharaj is one of the Shaktyavesh incarnations of Lord Vishnu. Shaktyavesh means he has one particular quality of the Supreme Lord. So what quality of the Supreme Lord does Prithu Maharaj have? The Supreme Lord has a ruling power. The Supreme Lord is the greatest ruler. And this quality of the Supreme Lord that makes him a great ruler, this quality in a personified form is there in the body of Prithu Maharaj. He is a living entity, but he has that power. So he is the best king. He is the ideal king. And the Srimad Bhagavatam describes when he was ruling how everything in this world was exceptionally done. The law and order was maintained very nicely, and he took care of his citizens very nicely. All the citizens were very happy with him. Then one day, what happened is, for the betterment of his citizens, he started performing some Ashwamedha sacrifices. And Indra is a post. The Devata Indra is a post. So, how do you get that post? One of the qualifications to get the post of Indra is to perform 100 Ashwamedha sacrifices. So, Prithu Maharaj, because he's an exceptional king, he performed 99 Ashwamedha sacrifices. It's very difficult to do this Ashwamedha sacrifice. It takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of planning, and a lot of purity has to be maintained. And now he's on the verge of performing the 100th Ashwamedha sacrifice. And as he's performing, Indra, who is in the heavenly planets, he cannot tolerate it. And he feels, oh, he is becoming a competitor to me. As soon as he performs the 100th Ashwamedha sacrifice, he can become my equal. So Indra does not want this 100th Ashwamedha sacrifice to happen. So Indra comes in the guise of a sannyasi. He is wearing saffron clothes. And when nobody is seeing, there is a storm, there is some rain that is happening. Indra, in a very swift motion, steals that horse. So the horse that is meant for the Ashwamedha sacrifice is stolen by Indra. And suddenly everyone is saying, oh, where is that horse? Where is that horse? And the son of Prithu Maharaj, he sees and he is about to put an arrow and shoot. And as he's about to shoot, Indra, he gives up the clothes of a sannyasi and he reveals that he's Indra. So then, he feels, oh, he's Indra. He's a big personality. How can I kill him? But Indra also becomes really very terrified and he gives the horse. Then the horse is again brought. Again, they are starting that sacrifice. Again, Indra comes in another sannyasi's form. And again, he steals the horse. Then again, this son of Prithu Maharaj is trying to shoot him. And Indra becomes terrified and he lets go of the horse. So this happens multiple times. So then the pujaris who are doing that yajna, they tell Prithu Maharaj, see this Indra, he becomes very uncomfortable whenever somebody does some punya, whenever somebody does some tapasya. So this thing will continue forever. If you want, then with our mantras, we can pull Indra into this yajna kund. So he will be destroyed. And Prithu Maharaj, he feels, why is he obstructing my duties? Why is he obstructing my performance of the Ashwamedha Yajna? So as the Brahmanas are trying to chant the mantra, as soon as they chant that mantra, Indra will be forced from the heavenly planets to fall into that Yajna Kund. He will be destroyed. As they are about to chant those mantras, Lord Brahma appears there. And Lord Brahma tells those Brahmanas, how can you do this? And Lord Brahma says that actually Indra, he has a dark side. Indra has some problems. He becomes very insecure whenever somebody does some tapasya. But actually, he's one of the servants of the Supreme Lord, and he is the leader of all the devatas. So the Supreme Lord has some expectations from Indra, and if you kill him like this, then aren't you disobeying the Supreme Lord? So the mantras are about to be chanted, but the Brahmanas keep quiet. And then Brahmaji turns to Prithu Maharaj and he says, how can you become angry on yourself? Yes, so the shloka, it says, how Atmanaha. How can you become angry on yourself? So now Prithu Maharaj is not becoming angry on himself, but Brahmaji is reminding Prithu Maharaj, see, you are personification of the Supreme Lord's power of ruling. It means you have to show how to rule properly. In that sense, Because you embody the power of the Supreme Lord, you are not different from the Supreme Lord. And Indra, you can say he's one of the chief assistants of the Supreme Lord. So he is like the hands of the Supreme Lord. So you are also non different from the Supreme Lord, and the hands are in one sense non different from the body. So Indra is also non different from the Lord. So how can you become angry on yourself? And then he says, you want to earn some punya by performing those 100 Ashwamedha sacrifices. So I'm telling you that you will get that punya by performing your 99 horse sacrifices. Whatever fame, whatever punya, whatever advantage, whatever benefits ordinary people get by performing 100 Ashwamedha sacrifices, I guarantee you that you will get by performing 99 Ashwamedha sacrifices. Okay, so your work is done. Let go of this 100 sacrifice and let Indra be happy. Let Indra not become insecure that now there is one competitor. And you know what happens? Prithu Maharaj, he accepts this proposal and he stops the 100 sacrifice. And as soon as he stops the 100 sacrifice, you can see in the picture, Lord Vishnu is there, Garuda is there, and Lord Shiva is there, Lord Brahma is there, all the devatas are there. And in the picture, in the front, you can see the person on his knees is Indra, and the person who is pulling Indra is Prithu Maharaj. So actually, when Brahmaji tells Prithu Maharaj to stop, Prithu Maharaj could have objected and said, excuse me, who's supposed to stop? Am I doing something wrong? I'm just doing my kingly duties. I'm just doing whatever is needed, whatever is expected from me. I'm setting a very high standard of doing all the sacrifices to please the Supreme Lord. And look at Indra. Actually, he is on the post of a Devata, but he keeps doing all these things by which he expresses, he exposes his insecurity. And now he is the one who is doing nonsense. See, if he wanted to stop the sacrifice, then he should have come to me and he should have told me, I am getting insecure, you stop the sacrifice. Just look at him, how he's doing it. He's coming in the role of a sannyasi. He's coming in the role of saffron clothes. And he's stealing this horse and he's doing it in a very illegal way. So instead of telling me to stop, isn't it your duty to tell Indra to stop? But Prithu Maharaj does not say anything like that. Prithu Maharaj is reminded by Lord Brahma, who are you? Forget about Indra. I don't have much expectations from Indra because Indra has so many material desires and he keeps doing things which should not be done. Forget about him, but I'm talking about you. Who are you? Are you supposed to do all this? Or are you supposed to set a very high standard? And Prithu Maharaj, without arguing with Lord Brahma, अरे उनको पहले बोलो मुझे क्यों बोल रहे No, he accepts it and he stops the 100 sacrifice. And because he stops the 100 sacrifice, Indra again becomes a gentleman. And Indra comes and begs for forgiveness, and the whole story ends. So the point is, when we have our own ego, then we think I am this, I am that. But Lord Brahma reminds Prithu Maharaj about his original identity. The original identity of Prithu Maharaj is he has to set a very high standard because people look up to him as one of the avatars of Lord Vishnu. People don't know, people don't accept Indra as one of the avatars of Lord Vishnu. So it is the duty of Prithu Maharaj to set a high standard, not of Indra. And sometimes in my own life, at my home, I am elder brother and I have a younger sister. So in my childhood days, this would happen many times. My younger sister would do something and then I would get angry on her, and my mother and father would always tell me, you are the bigger, you are the elder son. आप बड़े भाई हैं, so you have to set a good standard. And this would irritate me so many times. And I would say, it sometimes seems to me that by being an elder son, I have committed some crime. Because you never ever scold my sister. And you always tell me that you are the one who's supposed to set a standard. But when I read this story, then I understood. Actually, that is our culture, that we don't want to discipline people. We don't want to discipline people by force. We don't believe in disciplining people by physical punishment or mental punishment. We believe in setting a good culture by behaving properly. So the elders in a family, have to set a very high standard of behaving, and younger ones automatically follow. Similarly, in society, there will always be people who don't want to follow rules. But the Shrestha, the respected people in society, they have to set a good standard so that by looking up to these people, the people who are not behaving properly, they feel inclined to change themselves. And that is why, who am I? This is a very big question. And unless this question is answered, none of us will feel the need to self discipline ourselves, to actually live by high standards. And that is why in the scriptures, in the Gita, it is mentioned, who am I? Actually, I am a spirit soul and I am a part of God. God is supremely pure, God is supremely beautiful, God is supremely intelligent, God is supremely renounced, God is supremely famous, God is supremely rich also. And I have those qualities in a small, minute form. So I am a part of God, but I'm apart from this body and my mind. I'm like an eaglet who has now fallen into this tribal village, and I'm thinking that I'm a small chicklet. So if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter is Arjun talking big, big things. This is not right and that is not right. And look at how Krishna handles the situation. Krishna does not tell him, pick up this weapon and fight with Duryodhan. Krishna does not tell him any of that. How does Krishna begin the Gita? Second chapter, when Krishna starts speaking, he says, my dear Arjun, actually, you are not the body, you are spirit soul. And the body is ever changing, but the spirit soul never changes. And once you understand that you are spirit soul, then you kind of not get affected by this ever changing reality around you. Because this ever changing reality around you can only impact your mind. This ever changing reality around you can only impact your body, but it can never impact you, the person, the spirit soul. And in this way, the Gita progresses ahead. Similarly, my dear friends, in our life, we may have many struggles, we may have many challenges, and sometimes we may also feel, अरे ये गलत कर रहे हैं तो मुझे क्यों बोल रहे हैं? But if we are the elders in our family, then there is an expectation from us to set a higher standard, and that is what Krishna is also telling Arjun, that my dear Arjun, don't run away from your duties. What you call as non-violence will be misinterpreted as cowardice. डर गया, भाग गया. Whereas in your heart you are thinking, no, no, I want to do them a favor. No. According to me, I feel you need to fight this war, but you fight this war as a duty. You don't fight this war with a revengeful attitude. Sometime back in the first session, we discussed how non-violence was also mentioned as one of the qualities. And this is being spoken on a war field. So Krishna is saying non-violence. Non-violence is a good quality. But where is he speaking? This is speaking on the war field. It means he's not talking about external violence. He's talking of internal violence. If there is a need to fight, you need to fight. But in the heart, there should never be a revengeful attitude. There should not be malice in the heart. There should not be purposeful violence. There is some violence that is part of staying in this world. Because you are staying in this world, some violence will be forced on you and you will have to participate in some violence. But at least it should not be purposeful. And that is how we can understand the importance of not having false ego. So who am I? I am not this body, I am not this soul. Currently, I am in this body. Currently, I am being affected by the mind. But anytime in a tough situation, if you can remind yourself of this basic fact, then a lot of amazing things can happen. Because see, when there's a storm here inside, why is this happening? Why is he behaving with me like this? Why is she behaving me like this? Actually, in that stormy weather, we cannot talk, we cannot behave, and we cannot think normally. Just like when this Takte, this storm came to Bombay, all of us, we face difficulties in our life. Similarly, we have to reduce the storm inside. We have to become calm inside. And when we become calm inside, then we can actually think what is right for us, what is beneficial for us. In an angry state of mind, in a revengeful state of mind, we can never ever think of our own benefit. And many times what happens is somebody does something wrong to us, either we get depressed or we get revengeful. And in both situations, we harm ourselves. But when we don't have a revengeful attitude, but we do whatever is necessary, then we can actually do the needful. So, because I am a part of God and I am apart from this body and mind, my first duty is to please Him and satisfy Him and mold my life accordingly. So, we all have this important duty to mold our lives. We have to mold our lifestyle, we have to mold our thinking, we have to mold our talking, so that every single word that we speak is an opportunity to please God. Every single thought that we have is an opportunity to please God. Every plan we make in our life is an opportunity to please God. Are we coming closer to God? Are we coming closer to what He expects from us? By every word we speak, by every thought we have, by every plan we make, is our ambition in life in line with pleasure of God? That is how actually a lot of amazing changes can happen in our life. The next item we discussed, to a great deal about the previous item because it's one of the fundamental items of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. That's why we gave a lot of time. We'll quickly go through this. So this is Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. And the translation of this is the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. So are we perceiving that there is death forced on us? Are we perceiving that there is old age forced on us? Are we perceiving that there is disease that is forced on us, no matter what we do? Pre-COVID, the human society was very proud of its medical advancement, and they would say, ha ha ha, we have conquered diseases and we don't need God and all this sentimental stuff. We are far more advanced and all that. Now, COVID has again brought us to our knees, at least internally, if not physically. And all of us have become humble and we have learned to accept that, yes, not everything is still in control of mankind. So, on the screen, I'm showing you some picture. There is somebody traveling in a chariot and he is looking at an old man who is bent. In this picture, this person traveling by a chariot is seeing somebody who's deceased and who has some problems with his body and probably is taking some medicine and like that. And in this chariot, we see the same person who's traveling by chariot and he's seeing a dead person being carried. Does anybody know about whom we are talking? Who's the person sitting in the chariot?
Gautam
Prabhuji, is this
Buddha.
what is
Siddharth. Siddharth.
Yes, perfect. Perfect. So this is before he became Lord Buddha. This is Siddharth. This is the Prince Siddharth. And he was always shielded from the truth of life because his parents wanted him to enjoy life. But one time when he went outside the palace, suddenly he saw this one person is lying and four people are carrying him. And then he asked the charioteer, what is this? And he said, this is death. And he said, oh, why? What is death? He said, this is inevitable. And then he said, what is this person? He says, this is disease. And he said, oh, but he can't even speak. No, he said, but this is forced. You cannot avoid it. And then he said, what is this? And this is old age and this happens to all of us. And one day we will not be able to walk straight and we'll have to bend down and we'll have to take support of a stick. And then the Siddhartha, he said, if all this is unavoidable, then I want to find a solution for all this. And then he gave up his family life and sat under a tree and he meditated. And that's how, he gave some knowledge. So he did not accept the existence of God, but at least he said that we need to focus on solving these unavoidable miseries of life. And that's how we have Gautam Buddha. Okay. So why should we be forcibly, this birth, death, old age, and disease, it forcibly subjecting the eternal, changeless spirit soul to ever changing situation, constantly from this situation to that situation. So this material world is constantly changing, and you and me are never changing. So a never changing personality is being subjected to ever changing situations, from one misery to another, without any respite in between, without any break in between. What is happiness for all of us? The happiness for all of us is basically absence of misery. प्रभु जी, कल मेरे जीवन में ऐसी तकलीफ थी, कल आने वाले कल में मेरे जीवन में ऐसी तकलीफ आने वाली है, तो ये दोनों मिजरी के बीच में जो काल है, when there is absence of misery, that is happiness. And that is not happiness. There has to be some positive happiness. See, if somebody is beating us with a stick and then he gets tired and he gets exhausted and they says, "Abhi 5 minute baad, I will resume my beating." Then in a 5 minute period in between, if we are happy, then that is our foolishness. We should not be happy when that beating stops. We should be happy when there is some positive, soothing happiness that comes in our life. So most of the times there are miseries being enforced on us, whether we want it or not. And just the absence of misery is misinterpreted by all of us as presence of happiness, but that is not presence of happiness. So unless we accept that material life is miserable, unless we accept birth, death, old age, and disease is miserable, till that time, none of us will have an impetus for spiritual life. One of the necessities of having a desire to advance in spiritual life is to see very closely the miseries of death, the miseries of old age, and the miseries of somebody who is deceased and whose disease is not being solved by doctors. I'm not talking of fever, I'm not talking of headache, I'm not talking of some common cold. I'm talking of terminal illness where you take medicines for years and years and no doctor is able to diagnose your cause of the disease and you're miserable. Sometimes I've seen patients not only they are sick physically, but because of that prolonged illness, actually it makes an impact on their mind also. They lose uh, they lose the desire to interact with people. They lose the desire to talk with people. Why? Because they feel, oh, there's something wrong in my body and it is just taking so long to diagnose it and it is taking so long to treat it. So it's very important for us to understand this. Next item onwards, which is Asakti, we'll discuss next time onwards. So I'll stop here. If anybody has any questions, then you can unmute yourself and ask questions.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji.
It was a great storytelling session. I enjoyed it. Superb. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Your presence makes me speak all these stories. I have
No,
to
really, it was
think of
great.
something
And
interesting.
I really enjoyed it very much, today's storytelling and its relevance. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Anybody else has something to share or anybody else has some questions, doubts?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, is it possible
Yes.
that ugly duckling story which we read is taken part of this story? Possible.
Yeah, it could be inspired from this. Yes, it could be
Yeah.
inspired
But
from
they
this.
didn't understand the owl part, the guru part, the devotee.
Yes,
Probably.
yes, yes. Also, they don't have that spiritual part. It's just that, he's different, that duckling is different,
Yeah.
but they don't give that spiritual lesson from it.
Spiritual part they didn't take.
So that is the, speciality of Western civilization. They take everything, but they take out God from it.
Yeah, remove the essence.
They'll take out God from it. They'll take out the essence. Okay, so thank you all for your patient participation, your enthusiastic desire to learn from Gita. We'll meet next Thursday and we'll continue with the teachings of Lord Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita. Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagwan ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare